Hi, good evening and welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. We also coming to you live on YouTube. You can get it there on the Daybreak News, wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing. Good night, good morning. I know many of you are tuning in from some places where it's morning at the moment. It's always a pleasure to be with you, to share with you, to talk with you, and to discuss and to maybe quarrel with each other because there are many things that are important towards the development of this country. And we are at the crossroad right now. I've always said that. Got to make some serious decisions, and that's where we are. Before I get into it, I could tell you something that happened somewhere in the 80s. There were not many occasions back then because we didn't have a lot of money. We were living in a place called Newtown. Some people would say Kitty, but it's not Kitty. It's just adjoining Kitty, the Silver Street, and not too far away. Some people would say it's a stone throw. It's not a stone throw. You got to walk. It is the border cricket ground, as we know, the famous ground there. Guyana would know it, and some people who love cricket would also know that area there. And my mom and my dad took my brother and myself to border. Kalichoran was there. The two Kalichoran were playing, and I didn't understand, but I know something big was happening. The roar of the crowd and everything, and there was a feeling of excitement in the air. Um, as I grew up listening to Tanti Moore and said the ball was bowled so fast that you could see the writing on the ball, there were many things that came out about cricket. Cricket was part of our DNA in this country. It was so exciting, and over the years we have CPL now, but there are many things that went wrong along the way. The bigger, longer format of the game, and then the one day. But it's all exciting because when CPL comes to Guyana, it's a party in town, they would say. But I'm not gonna continue here. I'm gonna hand you over right now. I want to say good night to my co-host Freddie Kissoon, and he's going to do the honors. He has institutional knowledge, and he's going to introduce a man here who is very larger than life when it comes to cricket in Guyana and around the world. Freddie Kissoon.
Thank you, Leonard. Well, it's not only cricket. He's very famous for being involved at a very high level in different kind of sports. In fact, he held headship of many sporting organizations outside of cricket. But we have something unusual before we introduce one of the most famous names Guyana has produced. Something unusual. I was with my wife at the Digicel corporate head office. She was buying a smartphone, and my Mango Pelter rang. And this guy told me, "Hi, my name is Mr. Prasad. I am in Guyana. My father has been a fan of you for a very long time. He cuts out all your columns, and I have been an ardent fan of the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. My wife never missed it. So when I came to Guyana, I said I'll contact you, and I have bought a little gift for you and Gildarie." And so I said, "Wait." He said, "How can I contact you?" I said, "Where do you live? Where are you staying at?" He told me he's staying at a hotel very close to the Joshong Seawall. Well, if you know anything about me, you know I'm always on the seawall in the afternoon with my dog. So he came over to the seawall, handed me the little gift for Gildarie and myself, and he said he's looking at the program this evening. His wife wouldn't miss it. So I said to him, "Why don't you give your wife a surprise? Why don't you ring your wife and tell your wife you will be on the program this evening?" And I told him that because I told him who was our guest. And when I told him who was the guest, he said, "Oh my God, I would like to meet that man. That guy is your guest." I said, "Well, listen, we'll kill two birds with one stone. You tell your wife you're on the program, and you come and sit the same program with this guy you always wanted to meet." So, ladies and gentlemen, our guest is the iconic Joseph Rex Perreira. This nation is a very young nation, but when you were in the 60s and 70s and 80s, any name that is as famous as Guyana will be Joseph Rex Perreira. This evening, before we entered the studio, he said not to call him Mr. Perreira, to call him Rex. So I asked the operator to flash into capture the four of us, and you'll see our unusual guest. He'll shake hands with Mr. Perreira or Reds that he always wanted to meet. He's requested our operator to take a photograph so he can show his wife. So here is Joseph Reds Perreira. You want to shake hands with the
Mr.
famous Guyanese?
Honor and privilege to meet you.
Oh, it's an honor to me.
He was, remember the little boys, you know, used to imitate you and Tony Kosher.
Well, I used to imitate a lot of other people too. I imitated Arlott. I imitated E.W. Swanton. Right? I was doing exactly what you did. And one day, with a little bit of luck, people like the late Rafi Khan, people like Hugh Chumley, the late, they gave me an opportunity to
BL Crombie. Anyway, so our operator's taking a shot of our friend from Canada, and it's not, I hope your wife is looking at the program. Mr. Prasad, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And Austin Bookshop in the morning. It's on
in
Church
the
Street.
morning.
Mr.
Everybody
Prasad
will
will
know
be
to find
Mr.
it.
Prasad will be going to Austin Bookstore to buy Red's autobiography. And if you did not know that Reds has an autobiography, it is available at GCC and at Austin Bookstore. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, guys. All the best.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Guyanese, wherever you are, our guest is the iconic Joseph Reds Perreira. And I will start by reminding Reds of something that he would have completely, I'm assuming, that he would have completely forgotten. When I was 16 years old, that's a very, very, very long time ago, I used to like basketball, although my father was a famous cricket umpire, which Reds would know, Harry Kissoon, the umpire, and Reds would also know my brother, Lightweight Kissoon, who was
Very much
good.
so.
So when I was 16, I used to like basketball. I left primary school. I didn't go to high school. So I went every night to the parade ground to see basketball. At that time, the top clubs were Ravens and Eagles. And one night, the game started and the ball went out of the court. I remember this thing. I will always remember this thing. Now that Mr. Perreira is here, it is strong in my memory. The ball went out of the court, and this young, famous sports commentator picked up the ball, wiped it on his trousers, and threw it back into play, and the whole stand started to clap. Now, you can't remember that?
I cannot.
That happened, and I was there. So, Mr. Perreira, I'm telling you, when you have people like you here, it's an honor.
No,
it's really an honor.
It's really an honor to be invited. And you know, we can talk about the world game now.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
The world game now.
Before I hand to Gildarie, I just want to tell our audience about an amusing thing you told us this evening. Our Guyanese population is too young to remember this. Reds told us that in the 50s, you know, you had the famous Dapson Cup. That is where our cricketers made their name.
In Berbice.
In Berbice. And the Dapson Cup in Berbice will be played at the cricket ground of the mental hospital.
And other grounds.
And when the cricket was played, when the Dapson Cup was being played at the mental cricket ground, the patients would be there looking at the game.
Well, it was all part of therapy. You know, you couldn't just, you know, be constraining patients and locking them up. They came and they watched and they enjoyed it. It was all part of
It's remarkable that Freddie Kissoon, out of everything that you would say, that he remembered that. But
Yes.
I like that.
Reds people know, I have a long public profile in Guyana for 55 years. Many people would say Freddie Kissoon's crazy. So maybe that's the Freudian connection.
No.
But I
Oh my
thought, I thought, anyway, The first question is, why are you in Guyana? What have you been doing when you came in? What
Well,
have you been
it
doing?
was well advertised at the GCC, thanks to Tim Webster and to Ramsey Ali. I have sort of called it today broadcasting Test cricket. In 2019, I did my last 2 Test matches when South Africa came, and they played both Test matches in St. Lucia. I'm 84 in May, and I felt, enough is enough. I want to do other things. My memory is good. My voice, I feel, is still good. And there are other things to
Your
be
voice
done.
is the same.
Well, I came in on Monday with my wife, Zandra. She was once a deflowerment, and we had the event on Tuesday, which went very well. There were tributes from all over the world: Derek Murray, Michael Finley, Michael Holding, Sir Clive Lloyd called live, and other people from the Caribbean also did. A couple of Australian commentators. I don't want to bore the viewers.
No, please tell our viewers.
Yeah,
This is
no,
history. This is history.
There were a couple of the female commentators from the Caribbean who also called, who also did a tribute, because I have been trying to help as many people as possible. So it was brilliantly done by the GCC. They had some very good presenters reading the actual tributes, and I then focused on what I wanted to do for the GCC, and I brought my 1992 World Cup shirt, and I brought a shirt which has the first ever Cricket West Indies 2020, and it was towards encouraging the GCC to start a cricket museum that can hold a Clive Lloyd hat, a Rohan Kanai hat, a Carl Hooper hat, a Ronnie Sarwan bat, stuff that you can put it in New Zealand, a museum
Right.
that members of the public, children could go and visit the museum. You can have scorecards, you can have pictures. Don't forget that in 1930-31, the West Indies won their first Test match here against England, right? We had only gotten permission to play Test cricket in 1928. In 1931, we beat England here, and the captain was a Guyanese, Maurice Finance, right? It was a historic victory, first victory over England right here at Border. GCC is the oldest club in the West Indies, and I donated that, and I think it's been well received that there's the Clive Lloyd stand is now down, and there's space to build something for the future. You don't want to build for now, because we're going to have more and more teams and more young Kali Shurans and others coming through, and it could be something of work to enhance Border further. The only other kind of similar building is in Trinidad, where the Queen's Park Oval, they have created a similar thing with all the history leading up to Brian Lara. Well, we can do that leading up to Hooper and Sarwan and Chanjapal, and including the Kanais and the Fredrickson and the Solomons and all the greats, the Colin Croft, the Lance Gibson, and all the greats. So that's a little project which I started, and I think it needs some volunteers. An architect might like to volunteer to design the building. A couple of contractors might decide that they will come in and help the GCC. And the GCC needs some funds, because to bring myself and my wife here, it did cost them. To put on all the arrangements, it did cost them. So if there's any contractors who might be onto the show, by all means contact Mr. Webster or Mr. Ramsey Ali and make your contribution. Whatever happened on Tuesday is behind. I showed on Tuesday how cricket is a unifying force in Guyana. One people, one nation, one destiny. Cricket brings us together. When Lloyd and Kanai was batting in the World Cup in 1975, nobody was thinking, about who vote for who. Nobody was thinking other than what a great partnership. Two Guyanese great partnerships. When Gibbs and Edwin Mohammed, bowled out Barbados for 98 in Barbados, when Sarwan and Chandra Paul broke the world record in Antigua, and I can go on and on. When Roy Fredericks took apart Australia,
Dennis Lilly.
Yeah, Lilly and Company, 169. I can give examples, and there are many examples when our tennis players, the Diablo sisters and the Harris sisters and all the other sisters, it brought Guyana together. When Guyana is doing well in sport, it brings people together. And hopefully that could be something that could be built on, right? Because politics gets out of the way. The background to a person, whether they're Hindu, Muslim, Catholic, gets out of the way, is what Guyanese are in fact doing,
You know what is remarkable here, ladies and gentlemen? This gentleman that is sitting here, this icon of Guyana, he's just 84 years old. Just a few years older than Freddie, and looks just a few years older than myself. So that's something, and the institutional knowledge that's there, that is something that's remarkable. He could tell you about 1930, and then we'll jump and tell you about Sarwan and Chandapal and the records that they've broken. Pay attention. Something to be learned. A few years.
But just let me cut you for a second. Which 84-year-old person in this world has a full set of hair on his head?
I don't know. Maybe he's lying about his age.
A full set of hair.
Well, I mean, the other 84 is not a full set of hair.
How many 84-year-old people?
I still have
people getting bald at times.
I still have a little. I thank everybody for it.
Look, Reds, I want to put you on the spot here. You said don't call you Mr. Perreira.
Full set of hair.
I remember a couple of years back, I think it was West Indies won the ICC T20. And there was something that stuck in my brains about tears. I think everybody was watching that last match.
Yeah.
Remember the name, and I think it was Carlos.
Carlos Rapid.
Yeah.
Right, and he was batting, and that thing there.
Remember the name.
Right,
yeah.
but the commentator, I think, was Leon Bishop.
Yeah.
And the thing stuck in my head. Could Reds Perreira give to the people of Guyana maybe a little of something that those who don't know Reds Perreira, because you retire now, of what it was like in the heyday? Just speak to your head and just give us some commentary.
Well,
put you on the spot here.
You're already setting me up.
Yep. Drove the ball into the cover?
No, we were losing. We were on the edge of the cliff, about to fall over the cliff, right? And it will take a miracle for the West Indies to have won, right? The England all-rounder Stokes.
Yeah, he's a current captain of English.
Current captain. Freddie, you still
this.
followed the game, boy. Well done.
Yeah. My father was a cricket umpire.
Stokes was bowling to Carlos Braffett, right? Mathematically, we needed 4 sixes. So Braffett is batting, and I suppose if the radio commentators, you're really putting me on the spot here. So Stokes moves in. The West Indies needing an impossible blast here from Braffett to win this game. Stokes comes in, bowls to Braffett. Braffett gets under it, hits that high. It's going. It's over the mid-wicket boundary, and that's 6. And is there something? Is there a twist in the tail? Braffett moves to so-and-so. Stokes goes back to his mark, mops his brow, and the adjustment being made in the field where they can't push anybody further back because Braffett has pushed all the mid-wicket. He's been right back. Stokes into Braffett, pitches up. Braffett again hits him high, straight out to wide mid-wicket. Yet another boundary. This is getting very interesting as the West Indies on the edge of the cliff now may just be hoping that Braffett can hit the next 2 deliveries for the next 2 sixes. Stokes really under pressure. I mean, this is almost an embarrassment to Stokes. As he comes in once more, Bolster Braffett, and the Barbadian hits him again in the same direction. He's not changing his line. He's into the leg stop. It goes high over mid-wicket, and yet another 6. 1 ball to go. The West Indies needs 6 runs. And if a playwright had written this script, this is exactly how he would have written it. The crowd extremely quiet as Braffett flexes muscle, Stokes on his way, and starts, stops, goes back to his mark, and Braffett just walks around in a little circle, composes himself. He knows that he will remember this moment forever, so will the world. And Stokes is in, Bolster Braffett. Braffett hits him again. This is going to be another 6, and the West Indies came from behind to win the World Cup. And Braffett, remember the name. Remember the name, Carlos Braffett. The West Indies have won the World Cup. Boy, you really put me on a...
Freddie Kissoon. Freddie Kissoon.
When you were younger, you did any acting?
Freddie Kissoon. That was impromptu. That was something that we called, and that shows you the genius of the man that is sitting before us. Ladies and gentlemen, if you missed him, the older folks will know Rex Perreira. And who's the other gentleman?
Tony Kosher.
Those
are the two, but...
those were the two that was there. And we have a younger
but,
flock right now. But if we put him in the spot there, and he's managed... And that was exactly, if somebody had written the script, how Rex Perreira would have done a young Bishop.
Well,
I like it.
I'll tell you something, Freddie. Yeah. As most Guyanese know, I stammered really badly. You know, I had a terrible stammer. And my mother recognized I had a stammer. It affected me at school. It affected me socially. I couldn't carry on conversations, although I was a fairly outgoing person. I was an extrovert, and she would allow me to lie in bed and do imaginary cricket commentaries. You know, the great 1950s, Betzer bowls to Worrell's back, cuts that down to his backward point. She was encouraging me to use words I wouldn't normally use, you know. As Truman comes in, bowls to can I drives beautifully. I'm really, if my wife...
I think you're getting excited now.
No, if my wife is listening, she's going to scold me when I get...
Well, but if she's not seen it live, when you go back to the hotel room, she goes to YouTube, punch in Gildarie, Freddie Kissoon, Rex Perreira, and she see it. We have to, what is your autobiography like? What should we expect when we get it in another few days, maybe tomorrow?
Well, if anybody who could find it to buy it, it's about... Well, one of the people who made me write a book is Ian MacDonald, who I saw on Tuesday night. Great friend of mine, lovely person. And MacDonald kept saying to me, when I was about 68, he said, Reds, you have a story to tell, boy. You want to start yet? And every time he meets me, he will tell me that. You started yet? You got a story to tell, boy. You got a great story. Because I messed around, not messed around negatively, but I was involved in football as a goalkeeper. You know, I became the president of basketball. I did all kinds of things. I had a sports foundation in Guyana that I put in 10,000 US, you know. I became a little bit of a cricket commentator. I was deputy chairman to the National Parks Commission. Bunny Finance was chairman. I did all kinds of things. I traveled. In 1970, I met him again. He said, boy, you turn in 70. You start that book yet? So on my 70th birthday, I bought a pad. I said, no, what I have to write about, you know. I remember we came from the Pomeroon River by my father's boat. When we left the Pomeroon River, we're not leaving the Pomeroon as a family. My father's farm is still there, right? but he's bringing us to Georgetown via the Atlantic to start going to school. The war had just ended, and I was conscious of that. And I started from about 1946, how I arrived in Georgetown. We lived in 39 Russell Street in Charlestown, and you had to get you got to get accustomed to seeing lots of cars, because in the Pomeroon we might see a few buses at charity, right? The great Cass provided the bus service up there in Regina, but you never saw all the cars, donkey carts, street lights, all kinds of things. But we slowly got to understand that this is life. And that's how the book begins. My first school was St. Mary's RC
in Brigham.
It was run by some nuns, Sister Ursula, Sister Corinne, Sister Frances. The difference between the nuns, Sister Frances was a very tough nun. She was a serious nun. I mean, difficult to understand how she could qualify as a nun, because she wasn't friendly, but she was what she is. I didn't know her background. Sister Corinne, she really it took to me. And Sister Mary also was the principal. She was serious but nice. And that's how the book started.
It goes to high school. It takes in your high school days.
Yes, and then I had trouble with the stammering. When I went to Central, I really couldn't cope, because in those days people were not nice to handicapped people. People will jeer you. People will laugh at you. I came out of school, and my brother-in-law, the late Bertilly Young, got me a job at the British Guiana Credit Corporation, and I was the jack of all trades. I was taking transport to the registry to the lodge. I was getting checks signed. I was looking after all the mail. I was doing all kinds of things, and that's how the book continued. I started a club called the Berwick CC, and we played cricket matches at CYO, and we played football matches at where I think the famous bank opposite the Pegasus Hotel.
Yeah, GBT.
Yeah, GBC. And the book is about that. The book is about going to Suriname and spending a year under Andre Campaville and Ludwig de Sanders, learning about basketball and football. They were trained in Holland. Campaville was a great footballer. Going to England in '62. And before I went to England, I was working with Red Spot. Red Spot had gotten...
He would know about Red Spot.
Yeah,
they were located in...
Red Spot, the Rahman.
Yeah.
They had Red Spot,
there, right?
but I wasn't so much selling Red Spot. They had just gotten the Coca-Cola franchise. And in those days, Coca-Cola had to compete with Pepsi. So they asked me to come and join the company, so I can go and get the salesman to go into a bar or into a club and get a couple cases of cocaine. I went to England in '62. I remember the date, April the 7th. Landed in England, came back to Guyana in '67. In England, I was sports convener for the West Indian Student Center. I attended a couple of football courses. I did a pre-season training with Chelsea and Arsenal. I was interested in football coaching. I knocked around BBC Caribbean service, and if you get a job to go and interview some West Indian in England, you got 5 guineas, and 5 guineas in them days was plenty money, right? And I traveled to Europe, hitchhike. I came back in 1967. GBS opened in 1968. All that is in the book, in a structured way.
You have developed. I mean, no one can be involved in sports and be a sports commentator for so long without serious knowledge of the players and the game. This is something that I have met people talk the very famous names in Guyana, people who like cricket. And Reds, some people that you know too, they, they seem to think that Rohan Kanai was a better batsman than Chandra Paul. Do you? Those are the two big names. Do you support that theory?
Two different batsmen. Two different batsmen. Shiv, not that he couldn't score fast when he wanted to score fast, but Shiv's style, he learned it differently. He had his own style, right? Kadai was the more traditional cricketer. I mean, the way how he would stand, his stroke play was world recognized. Chandrapal had his parents bowling to a beach in unity at him, and he practiced and he practiced. But he had that very open stance, as you know. But when Chandrapal played the ball, he was very correct. You can't compare oranges and oranges just like that. Both great players, different styles, men for different roles, in the case maybe. And I get that question all the time, not just about Kanai and Chandrapal. Whether how good was Headley? What do you think of Richards? What do you think of Sobers? But there's a thin line between greatness. There's a very thin line between greatness. And sometimes, you don't worry to say, well, X is better than who, because there are examples of performances by all these great batsmen which stand out. I mean, Roy Fredericks 169 at Perth in Australia when he destroyed Lilly and Thompson, is recognized as probably the top 4 innings ever played in Test cricket in Australia, which started in 1877. This whole who's better than who. Thank the Lord, thank Allah that we have produced all these great cricketers in the Caribbean. And I'm not really interested in saying X is better than Y, because there are so many great performances that you can look back. I mean, Kanai 256 in India, Lloyd 242 in India. You can go on and on. Sobers played some great innings. Richards played.
All right, but you journalists and media people and interviewers must have asked you over the years, in the context of the world, not your home of West Indies. Who is your favorite cricketer? No, cricket has different compartments. Who's your favorite batsman, bowler, all-rounder, and wicketkeeper? You back decades, so you must.
Well, remember, I grew up as a boy. My father didn't allow me to go to matinee and cricket on any one day. You choose. Well, I had to do chores around Charlestown, go to the Independence Market, buy stuff for the home, do stuff in the house, garbage and things like that, go out and buy what my mother needed. And then I'll go to cricket. And my first, I suppose, because I just started, my first hero was Robert Christiani, right? My first batting hero was Robert Christiani, because he was, in fact, himself and John Trim and C.M. Quat were the only 3 Guyanese. Well, Berkeley Gaskin had played in 48. But at that time, the 3 of them went to India in 49. Christiani got 100, a test 100, so he became the first Guyanese to get a test 100. They were my early heroes. John Tribb came from Berbice, genuinely fast, bowled very well in India, bowled very well in Australia, but surprisingly wasn't selected for England in 1950. So to come back to you, my early heroes was the ones I saw. There was a batsman called Peter Bailey, who was a very outstanding player, made the West Indies team to 1930, I didn't play. And then in 1950, you talk about early heroes, and I hadn't traveled out of Guyana. British Guyana versus Barbados. Leslie White and Glendon Gibbs put 390 on the board. At close of play, there were 390 without loss. The next day they continued. White made 260, Glendon Gibbs made 216. So there were many players that was people you looked up to at that time. I mean, I remember seeing Moonsami from Barbados, Sonny Moonsami. This is before the Kanai Butcher period. Sonny Moonsami was a beautiful stroke player, you know. I mean, I remember seeing people bowl to him, and the in-swinger coming in, he flicked it to square leg, you know, beautiful shots. No.
Freddie, yeah, and I was telling, and those are some good examples from
We
the
still
old
have to
days,
come
right?
back to bowling.
Some of those names I probably would not, but and this is something, Freddie, I think I said it earlier. My mom named me after Leonard Bacon, and my brother was named after Desmond Haynes. He's Desmond. So although it's strange that although we were named after cricketers, famous cricketers, I wasn't following cricket along that way. But I want to come to you along in your books. I remember in the 80s, the late 80s, going on to the 90s, we were looking at Courtney Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, and then in the 90s, Lara really started to get up there. But at that point in time, also, although you've seen these guys, the deadly duo we call it the bowlers, and then you see Lara who broke records, and yet our cricket was in a decline, and it has never, to our knowledge, recovered. What went wrong?
Well, I think we dominated the world for 15 years. And whilst we were dominating, we weren't planning for the future. As if these players would have never gotten old, you know. And one year after another year, they all stopped playing for different reasons, age, sight, and things like that. And we didn't have a system to replace them. I mean, we are a small cricketing nation, don't forget. Australia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, you have millions, right? The biggest West Indian nation is Jamaica, just under 3 million people, maybe, you know. But the board then didn't make the plans in terms of exposing young talent who then wasn't playing for the West Indies on 8 tours, training camps, and looking to try and bring them on. So when we lost the Frank Worrell Trophy in Jamaica in 1995, the world was shocked. But the problems had shown its head earlier. So it was a surprise to some people. But back to your question, there was no forward planning. And therefore, when all the great players starting to go, the Kanais and later on the Richards and the Sobers and the Lance Gibbs and that lot, they wouldn't have young people to come through and take their position.
But just bear with me, Freddie.
Yeah, sure.
If I can, I read, I think it was Ramnore Sarwan. I think he's our national selector at the moment.
He's the chairman.
Yeah, the chairman. So he made a statement about Shamran Hetimaya, who's not going to be playing for Guyana, but is headed somewhere to the Middle East. Has CPL destroyed? Not CPL, my apologies.
T20.
Has T20 destroyed the
franchise cricket?
Franchise cricket.
Yeah.
Has it destroyed that? Are we seeing the death of it? Because when you see the crowds, whenever there's Test cricket there's not. It's not a money making thing, and people prefer to go there. And then in any case, I don't think it's my sneaking belief that there's not a love or there's not a passion by cricketers anymore for the longer game. They come in, quick money, out of it. Your thoughts?
Well, the last thing you referred to Hetmyer, he was picked to play for Berbice in the present inter-county. And he said, no, I'm unavailable. I want to spend more time with my family. And Sarwan simply said, well, I mean, he can make his decision. He has the democratic right. The career of a cricketer is 10, 15 years. You've got so many years to make money to look after your family for the rest of their lives. But the only way you can play for Guyana is if you play in the inter-county. And it's something which is happening worldwide. There are some people who have turned their backs on Test cricket because they're focused on making sure that at the end of the day, they have enough dollars in their bank that they can live a peaceful life, because they might not have any skills, any qualification to go on. I mean, in some cases, there is life after cricket, right? And in my case, although I continue to broadcast, I realized that I could not be a commentator, you know. So I got an offer from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States to come and open the sports unit for the 8 small islands. And I said, sure, it's going to be a challenge, but, you know, it's something to look forward to. And, but to come back to this whole question of franchise cricket, you asked me a question. Is it spoiling Test cricket? I would say yes. It's probably having an impact, because franchise cricket is all about hitting boundaries, all about maybe cultivating some bad habits. But it is what is bringing the crowds. It is what bringing the crowds, right? Test cricket is not bringing the crowds, and maybe we need to look at how we can make Test cricket more
Attractive?
attract more people, and maybe we need all kinds of discussions. We need to move it to a 4-day game instead of a 5-day game. We need to put a number of overs that can be bowled on the first innings, so no team could make 500, and by that time you realize that it's going to be a draw, or what is it? You say, okay, a team will have 110 overs on the first innings, each side, and then, you know,
Yes, a different format.
it's normal cricket, right? Normal cricket. I see they're bringing pink ball, playing on the lights. In some countries, that's work. In some countries, you know, people finish work at 3 o'clock, or when they go and watch cricket on the lights. That's something that the ICC has come up with. But basically, now, the bigger countries, India, England, Australia, they're the ones who are making the money. They're the ones who are controlling the ICC coffers. The West Indies and Afghanistan and New Zealand and Scotland, we are getting pittance. We are not getting the fair shake. We are not getting equal shares, because you know, the IPL, the Indian Premier League, is the second most lucrative earning world sporting event. Second most. I'm not talking about cricket, you know.
After basketball, and
I think
Beating basketball, the gridiron of America is the only thing that's making more money.
the what?
Gridiron,
Oh,
you know. Dallas Cowboys and you know the gridiron, is Super Bowl and all those things.
yeah.
IPL is making billions,
Mm-hmm.
and that billions basically stays in India. India does not allow their cricketers to come outside and
Yeah, they
played
don't
the
do right.
CPL.
No
right?
other franchise.
Yeah,
no other
yeah.
franchise.
England, they have got the industry, right, to support what they call the hundred competition. They've got the players, right? Australia's got the Big Bash, right? Big Bash earning millions, which they can pump back into the game. Now, the other day, Michael Osterton, who's married to a Guyanese, and whose son carries the name the Carries,
He plays for Middlesex.
playing for Middlesex, he said the ICC should put a penalty on all the countries who apply for a franchise to have white ball cricket, and that money should come into the smaller countries of the ICC. You know,
But Reds, I was wondering if Test cricket is not bound up with the concept of marketability. The reason for regional integration in EU CARICOM is that the more market you have, the larger the market, the better the economy. India is 1.3 billion people. Australia is 35. Pakistan is 200 million. The UK is 60 million.
Bangladesh is about 200 million.
People in those countries, the numbers are so large, the economy is so good, that you could have people afford to go to 5-day cricket.
Yes.
In a place like Guyana, St. Lucia, with a kind of wages and salaries, could a small region, when you combine the CARICOM, is Jamaica 2.5 million, Trinidad 1.5 million, Guyanese 3/4 million, St. Lucia, Grenada, they make up 500,000. When you consider that small population, comparing it to Pakistan 200 million, Bangladesh 300 million, the problem with Test cricket is a small economy with a small population.
I don't agree with that.
Let me answer.
You go first, sir.
Very relevant what you just said to now. But when we were beating the world,
That's correct.
the population wasn't any smaller. When we were winning, right? I remember going to a party just before a test match. I might say, "Boy, I'm going home and get some sleep." I will drive past border. People are already coming in from Escobar and coming in from Berbice to watch Test cricket, right? All the grounds in those days in the Caribbean when we were winning, right? And we started winning, right? When we started, we started winning last earlier. But when we had that dominance where we weren't beaten for 15 years, there was no difficulty with attracting crowds. The economies were probably doing better. Tourism was doing better. Sugar was earning, right? There was no tourism then. But, there was a fair amount of economic activities. And the crowds were filled. I mean, in 1953, I saw my first match, India versus the West Indies at border. Huge crowds. When we started to lose in 1995, when that period of loss, right? You had the crowd starting to drop. Winning means a lot to West Indians. West Indies are yearning for success. I mean, we probably lose this match in South Africa. We are going to play India here. You might get a bigger crowd, depends if they give Trinidad and Guyana a game for obvious reasons. The options now to young people, because of all the technology, the smartphones, the internet, the WhatsApp and Messenger,
social media.
Yeah, it's a lot of distraction.
The online learning and things like that. years ago, 10 out of 10 boys wanted to play cricket. 9 out of 10 wanted to play cricket. Now, you've got some schools there no cricket because there's a focus now on learning. Some masters want you to get your education. They don't want to give 15 boys the day off to go and play a secondary school match. Years ago, you had a teacher who will volunteer to be the coach, the cricket master. In Barbados, places like Sir Frank Worrell went, now have to employ an ex-cricketer to come and keep the game going. So society has changed, Freddie. Society has changed. People have options, right? And there are more scholarships now for other things. You know, more scholarships. You can get scholarships in many years. Basketball scholarship, track scholarships, and things like that.
We can't let you go. The time is going. We can't let you go without your informed opinion. An opinion could be idiotic, it could be unwise, and an opinion could be informed. And people with knowledge and experience, you expect their opinions to be informed. And I would like to have your opinions on certain things in sports that I believe will be informed. What?
I might not necessarily answer. I can play.
Yeah.
I
I could leave it. But when you leave the ball, a guy got bowled like that in Test cricket the other day. I think there's a comment India versus Australia. He left the ball alone and got bowled. Who's your, obviously your iconic West Indian, so we're not going to deal with West Indian. Who's the cricketers that you think are admirable, near to genius outside of the West Indies that you embrace?
Well, I saw enough of Tendulkar to know that, you know, he's the top of the line.
Warren would be there.
Warren would be there. I mean, and the work ethic.
Muralitharan. Yeah. He has more spin wickets.
Yes,
than
but
Warren.
he was deformed, and you know, he had, I think, polio or something like that, and he got a lot of. They allowed him, because he didn't bowl with a straight arm because of the thing, but he spun the ball. You know, you think of you know, the English batsmen. You think of Dennis Compton. You think of Tom Graveney. You think of Len Hutton in that period. You know, truly great. Australia, you know, the Don Bradman period and the Greg Chappell period and the Steve Waugh and the Mark Waugh, you know.
But currently Anderson has more Test wickets as a paceman, and that man is playing, and he has finished 40.
He's finished 40, but you see, the management of a player, you know, you manage your fast bowlers. And don't forget, one year when they came to the West Indies, both himself and Broad were left home. So they have nurtured them. They have worked carefully at their work rate. You know, they have not played them. If conditions doesn't suit them, they wouldn't.
You were chairman of this, chairman of that in many sports division other than cricket. Outside of cricket, which is your baby, what other sports you like? And let me you know, basketball after cricket, or boxing.
No, after cricket, I would like football. Because I mean, I was involved in coaching Santos. I was involved in coaching the BGCC. I was involved in coaching the national under-23 team. And when in England, I went. I did a pre-season with Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and I went up to Arsenal and did a pre-season, focusing on coaching. I love track and field. I mean, I really enjoy track and field. You know, the sprints
I can't let you go without this because time is going. Pele, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Messi. Those are the three big names. For Joseph Wetz Perreira, which of the three you put as numero uno?
Pele, Messi, Ronaldo.
Pele, Messi, Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Pele seemed to
You didn't
think.
hesitate there.
Pele seemed to think before he died, a few years before he died, he seemed to think that Ronaldo was more versatile than Messi in terms of using both legs to score.
Look at conditions for football when Pele played. Look at the type of pitches that Pele had to play on. Look at the type of very crude footballs that Pele used to have to pass and to dribble with. Now you have football grounds like billiard tables. You watch it. Please check tomorrow morning. Now you have footballs which are colorful, well made, right? When I played for the GFC, at the age of 16, Ian McQuat had gone away on honeymoon. 16 years of age, I'm playing for GFC against infantry, which was a club. The size 5 looked like a size 6. The ball had a lace. You laced up after you blew up the inner tube and pushed it inside, and you clipped it so it can't go soft. That was the kind of equipment then on the Pele. The modern footballer have much more going for him, right?
Times
So
have changed.
it's hard to compare like that. But there are other great forwards, you know. Hungary had Puskas, right? Hungary had Puskas. England had Stanley Matthews, right? I mean, England had Bobby Charlton.
Yes.
Wow. Could
We
you tell
have-
our viewers what's the name of your autobiography?
Living My Dreams.
Living My Dreams by Wetz Perreira. Please go and get a copy.
And
Gildarie, please go and get
I'm
a
going to
copy.
get a copy.
Right.
I don't
I'm
know.
going tomorrow to Austin,
and
and
it's,
get a copy.
and
Living
it's-
My Dreams
it's on
by
Amazon.
Okay, Reds, we have to come down to the close of play.
Yeah.
Santa Paul has led us to the draw, and you're closing to the close of play for the people of Guyana. Could you close the day as commentator?
You know, if you had told me that this band would want me to
The commentator?
do a commentary.
do a commentary, right?
Of course, they're going to put you on the spot. You
In
can't
this
have-
this
I would
night,
have chased him out of the studio if
This
I know he
night
was going to
I-
do that. But
I can't
I'm glad
allow
he-
him to sit
I'm
here.
glad he did that. I'm glad he did
No,
that.
I got the
I'm glad
experience
he did
Reds
that.
as
Do
it
you
is, and
know?
I love it. I love
Do
it.
you know that what you did there? I mean,
It's gonna
you-
stick in
you
my
got
mind
to-
forever. Something
got to be wrong with someone.
like
not
poetry, Freddie
not to
Kissoon.
have enjoyed that.
No, it was like poetry coming out that somebody is there with it.
Joseph Wetz Perreira, I could
No,
speak
but
it for
stop.
myself. I can't speak for him.
if you
It
had
was
asked,
really an
if
honest
you had
speech.
asked the late Clement Tate to read something from some play, if you had asked Ken Crosby to do something from some play, they will do exactly as I did.
Yeah, Daberdeen did it. We asked Daberdeen.
Yeah,
to read from
they
one of the-
will come out
David
and
Aberdeen did
read
it.
something from Shakespeare or read something from Derek Walcott or read something from a Guyanese writer. You know, if you sleep, eat something for all your
Yes,
life.
it becomes natural.
It is in you.
Second,
You know, it is
Second.
in you. I mean, and you know, for the benefit of your viewers, you all are inviting me to come. I
You'll
will-
do that again when you're in Guyana.
No, no, I definitely
we haven't- we
will.
haven't-
I will go along. I will.
We
go
haven't
along.
heard your views on
Definitely,
Brian
def-
Lara.
yeah.
We haven't heard your views on a
No,
lot
no,
of
no.
things.
But you know, I grew up hearing fairy tales, Jack and the Beanstalk, Red Riding Hood, and all those things. The first real fairy tale that I witnessed was Chandra Paul growing up in Unity, family bowling to him, coming through, playing a little cricket, committed to playing for the West Indies, and it all happened. He got picked for the Guyana under 16. He got picked for the under 19. He went to England with the West Indies, and boom, one day the selectors dropped Phil Simmons. Richardson decided to open. They had to pick somebody in the middle order. It was between Roland Holder and Shiv Chandra Paul.
And he never looked back.
Never looked back.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching us, Mr. Joseph Reds Perreira, what an icon. Just been honored by the Chorchong Cricket Club there, and he would have had decades commentating for cricket around the world. He's well known all over the world, and we have to honor our icons now, not when they die. And this is something very good by GCC to do it. Red has made us very proud of what he has done over the years, and it's an honor to have him. I wish that I could keep him a little longer so he could be able to bring us to the close of play at the end of the day. Of course, I don't know if Freddie want to get in. I'm being signaled that we're out of time, but it was really an honor to listen, to learn, and I think there are many, many more years that we could have sickened and listened to what he would have seen, what he would have commentated on. And these are the kind of stories that we want to tell in this country, because as we go forward, not looking back at history, not learning from it, it's a big mistake, huge mistake. It was an honor to also have my co-host here, Freddie Kissoon. He has a lot of institutional knowledge here too. Freddie, thank you very much.
I just want to put my arms around this
Yeah.
guy. Put your arms around this icon.
Yeah, I can do that. But I'm not hugging
It's
you,
always
Freddie.
good in the media.
Don't forget.
around an icon.
Don't forget the GCC needs a little bit of financial
Oh,
support.
this is a money man. This is a
To
money
do.
man.
I don't know.
I've been poor all my
I don't know about
Hey,
that.
Mr. Red, he's a businessman.
Right.
Me, I'm just.
When I'm talking to other businessmen, the
yeah,
GCC
yes.
needs the funds to build the museum for cricket, so that our young people could go there and look at what happened in.
I'm going to help you with it. I know how to do it. I have a forum. I'm going to put it up there.
Right.
But ladies and gentlemen, it's been a privilege to be in with you once again, and of course having Joseph Reds Perreira in the house, Guyana's #1 commentator, the world's #1 commentator.
No.
In my view,
One of the world's, one of the
Yes,
world's,
definitely
one
up
of
there.
the world's best
Yes.
cricket commentator. One of the world's best cricket commentator. There's no question about it. You may have the famous John Arlott or what have you, but Reds Perreira was
It's
up
gonna be
there
right up
with
there.
Tony Kosher.
Well,
And-
myself and Tony worked for 50 years together. He made me work very hard to make sure that I kept the level of us at just about one standard.
and that's competitiveness. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't say goodbye without saying happy happy World Women's Day, International
was
Women's Day. We missed it. I
Belated.
missed it. But so many women who would have done so many great things for this country. Whether you're a single mom, whether you're an executive in an office, whatever position that you hold, women has played a great time in our life in Guyana, around the world. Good night to you. Stay safe on the roadways. We're going to be back with you on Monday.